Welcome to Long Live Alternative Parties podcast. Today, friends, we are going to talk about some election reform. In addition to talking about the virtues of alternative parties, we also love to talk about election reform because that's part of our mission here. So today we have an individual. Her name is Triana, and she is with a movement called One Person, One Vote. So welcome to the podcast, Triana.
Thank you so much. Thank you for
Sure.
having me.
Of course. So if we could get started by you kindly giving us an introduction to yourself, a brief biographical sketch.
I'm Triana Arnold James once again. I am the president of Georgia National Organization for Women. I am the chair for the National Committee on Global Feminism. And yes, I run the organization One Person, One Vote.
Awesome. It sounds like you're a mover and shaker out there.
Yeah, and I don't know if you heard me or not, but I'm a veteran as well. So.
Oh, veteran too. Okay, cool. Oh, that's good. A lot of stuff.
Yes.
All right. So if you could please tell us what the organization One Person One Vote is all about. How the organization came about and how you got involved in it. That would be a great place to start.
How did I get involved? I've always believed in one person, one vote. And I believe in the power of the vote. And that is important that we recognize the power that lies within us. And I can remember back during the before the Hillary versus Trump and protesting the Electoral College, because I believe, just like with primaries, I really don't believe we should have primaries because only 13 to 21% of the registered voters get out and vote. So here you have an average of 17% of registered voters, and not the totality of the registered voters, just that small percentage deciding on who's going to be on the ballot. So it goes with the Electoral College as well. You have a small percentage that's going to decide who basically our leader, a president is. And I think that disenfranchises a lot of people.
Okay.
So I think that like I said, it disenfranchises the majority of the people, the registered voters.
Okay. So how do you propose we get rid of the Electoral College? Would that be through a constitutional amendment, or would that be through some other means? How do you recommend that we get rid of the Electoral College?
Well, first and foremost, we have to get like-minded people elected in local elections, because local elections really are the meat of our laws, and it starts, on the local level. That if we wanted to, like we were doing, protesting the Electoral College, and preventing fake electors as well, we have to start local. And getting like-minded people in office so that we can advocate for going towards the popular vote.
Okay.
As opposed to going with. So that's the first thing. And then we have to make sure that we look at other countries that look at the popular vote and their metrics, their surveying their outcome, and maybe a model, using some form of model to say we could do this here. We could do this here in the United States.
Sure. So where do you think is a good, since you're speaking of models, what country or countries do you think are good models?
Honestly, I don't know, because I have not looked at how other countries hold their elections
Okay.
in depth. I look at the numbers as far as who votes the most, and like here in Georgia, women are the majority of the population, and women vote more than men. The largest voting bloc is Black women.
Wow.
And so, in looking at things globally, it's like women, and women of color are voting in large numbers as opposed to anybody else.
Interesting.
So we are the voting bloc in the world.
Okay. So what contributed to that? Was there organizing in the past that contributed to this, like getting women of color interested in voting? Or how did this come to be that it became the number one voting bloc?
History. When in 1920, when the 19th Amendment was ratified, giving women the right to vote, that started it.
Okay.
And just to give you a little history, my great-grandmother was a suffragist.
Oh, cool.
I didn't know that until I got into advocating for the Equal Rights Amendment, which hopefully we can get that published and become the 28th Amendment, because our guaranteed right as women, and like I said in the beginning, I'm a veteran, so I care about the Constitution because I have signed that dotted line and sworn to protect the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So the only guaranteed constitutional right that we have as women is our right to vote. That's the only time we're pretty much mentioned in the Constitution. So that's why we need the Equal Rights Amendment, which will be the 28th Amendment.
Okay.
And so when I found all of this out in my history, then it made sense for me to advocate for, our right to vote, the Constitution, and changing the Constitution so that it gives equal rights to include women. And so that's how, not really how I got started, but that's how I really, became a super voter and paid attention to, okay, wait a minute, I have a history here. And then the things that I see and the things that we have as women, and being the largest voting bloc, we still don't have that constitutional protection. We have our right to vote, but here again, women in the South wasn't voting because of the Jim Crow law.
Oh, yeah.
So we needed the Voting Rights Act in order to, for Black women or women of color to be included in that large voting bloc.
Wow.
So
very intersectional, huh?
Yes. And we must protect that right to vote, because that is our opportunity to participate in the government. We should decide on our leaders. It should not be the government. It should not be candidates or politicians picking, their voters. Voters should pick their electors.
Sure. So do you think there's any additional changes, in addition to you mentioned the Equal Rights Amendment, that would make it easier for all women to be able to vote, black women as well as white women?
They're not just voting, it's recognizing and honoring that we are the largest voting bloc.
Okay.
It's protecting that, of course, protecting that right to vote, but also giving us equality and equity in this country. We do not have, but you can get our vote, but you're not passing laws that's going to protect us for equality and equity.
Okay.
So that's one of the changes. The other changes that I'm researching is switching the ballot.
Okay.
You know, in our ballot, we have the president, the vice president, and then we have, you know, the governor, if there's a governor election, our senators. The highest offices is the top of the ballot. And the last thing is people like your public service commissioner, your commissioners, your ballot initiatives. And I believe that it needs to be switched because, number one, a lot of people go in and they'll vote for the presidency and then they won't vote down ballot. So this is the down ballot initiative. And if we switch the ballot around to have like the ballot initiative or the ballot issues and then your public service commissioner, which I believe is the most important position in the world. So that's my personal opinion.
Wow.
You know, because they control your utilities. They make laws dealing with your utilities, your internet, you know, and broadband and, you know, things like that. And so, that, you know, here where we are now, that's the broadband makes the world go around. That's how we're able to connect with one another. And our utilities, we have to have light, we have to have water, we have to have gas, you know, things like that. And so they regulate all of that. So that's just my own personal opinion. I believe the public service commissioner is the most important role. And then your local elections. Then, you know, and then the highest. So the presidency would be the last on the ballot. And then you're able to vote up the ballot and instead of voting down ballot, and then you're able to get those people in office that, you know, those like-minded individuals that's going to protect, because you're going to see them first, and we're gonna make sure that they get the votes, you know, to, you know, like whoever we're, like I said, like-minded individual.
Sure.
So
wow. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just reiterating that would be the next thing to do is to switch the ballot around. Because we got to do what we do. We got to get like-minded individuals in there.
Okay. Does that require a law to be passed to change the ballot, or is that something that's done administratively?
I believe that would require a law signed on, you know, state by state to switch the ballot around.
Okay.
So I'm doing my research now, and I'm going to start with the Secretary of State, and then just kind of go from there.
Okay. Sounds good. That is a new idea we have not yet heard on this podcast. We've talked about dozens and dozens of ideas of election reform. We've had 300 some episodes of this podcast. So that's a new idea that we have not heard before. So bravo, congrats on having something that's novel, and that sounds like a very good idea too. So that would indeed be something worth trying.
In election reform.
Yeah.
And protecting our right to vote. So, and we wouldn't have all of these issues that that we've had in the last, I would say the last 12, 16 years.
Okay. So you think the last few election cycles have been particularly bad?
When it comes to the process, yes. Here in Georgia, if people, and see, like this year is going to be a telltale, because there's going to be long lines. There's going to be a lot of people voting, and here in Georgia, we can't pass out water
Oh
to
no.
people. And like organizations, we're nonpartisan. I mean, we don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, Green Party, Coffee Party, Tea Party. None of that matters. And so, but if people are exercising their right to vote, and we want people to stay in line because we want them to vote, there are organizations that were passing out water, passing out snacks, little paper fans, things like that. And so here in Georgia, it's against the law to do that. You
Oh no.
can't pass water and snacks and get people to stay in line. So
Did they do that? Or is your line of thinking? It sounds like a skewed line of thinking. Is it because they are saying that you're trying to influence elections? Is that why they're saying that you can't pass out stuff?
I've heard that that's one of their arguments, but like organizations like myself, we don't wear like, okay, you're Democrat, because you can't have, T-shirts on, you can't have signs within certain feet of the polling location. So, and a lot of times it's nonpartisan organizations. So that argument, that's one of their arguments, like you're trying to buy votes. I remember one person was, it was a long day and they were giving out hot dogs. It was dinner time. And they were just giving out hot dogs, and that person was accused of trying to buy votes. But it's not about buying votes. It's about just, encouraging people to stay in line.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, I think that's one of their arguments, that, their organizations trying to influence the vote. But if they're 503 or 501c4, they're not going to put their organization in jeopardy, like that. So they're going to do what they need to do and stay nonpartisan. And that's all it was about, because I used to hand out water, bottles of water. I used to, and I still do, drive people to the polls.
Oh, good.
Would have snacks, water. I would have, whatever music they listen to. I would be like, you want to listen to gospel? We'll listen to gospel. And driving people to the polls. And they're like, we can't do that anymore. We can still drive people to the poll, but we can't, give them water.
No.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's 100%.
So that's where we are. And this election cycle is going to be, it's going to tell a lot about our voting process, and some of the crazy draconian things that they've been trying to implement. But this election is going to be a test to those laws, and see what works, what doesn't work. My hope is that once they evaluate what works and what doesn't work, then they put in laws that's going to protect everyone's vote and not just a one-sided protection.
Sure, that sounds good.
Back to our original conversation, we need the popular vote. That's what's going to protect us. If we could go with the popular vote.
Okay. So the popular vote would be of benefit to people who are in minority groups, whether it's racial or ethnic or political. So that would benefit those people the most, right?
Exactly. It will.
Oh,
It
good.
will.
Good.
The
So
voting process should be
I'm sorry, I cut
simple.
you off. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. The voting process should be simple. It should be convenient, and it should be fair. That's where we are. That's where we're. I should say we're not there because they make it hard to vote. Sometimes it's not convenient, and a lot of times it's not fair for the things that you know our elected officials try to put in place.
Sure. And you say that this next election you believe is going to be a good test to see the direction our electoral system is going to go into, if it's going to be better or worse.
I'm not sure. I think it's going to be a test. We already have a a bad voting process, and not just here in Georgia, all over the country.
Sure.
And I think, like I said, I think this election is because of who's on the ballot is going to be a test of where we need to be. And I hope
Okay.
and pray that our elected officials pay very close attention to that and say, these things, there are things that need to change so that it can be simple, so that it can be convenient, so that it can be fair.
Yes.
And that's my hope.
Yeah. You gotta be optimistic, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. If you're pessimistic, some say you have to have a balance because you don't want to be the type of person that doesn't see the problems that are there. Yet you need to have hope to make the world better and to make, in our case here, the electoral system better.
Right. Right.
Yeah, that's a good perspective. And Georgia is very hot too, so of all states that need water bottles during elections, yours would be one of the top ones.
Yes. Cause during it really doesn't it gets cold, but not as cold. The sun is still shining during that time, and
Yeah.
so we've had situations where people have passed out,
Oh no.
need medical attention, because it's not, especially early voting. Early voting doesn't. It's not as cold. It's not that cold. But you never know. That's another whole issue with climate change. So.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, exactly. So if somebody passes out during the election, then they don't get to vote, or how does that work?
Well, it depends on the severity of it.
Okay.
Whether they have to be taken to the hospital or and that's why we're encouraging early voting and absentee voting, so the lines won't be so long and it won't be crazy, and we can
Sure.
make sure people are getting in. One of the things that we're working on is our campaign Know Before You Go Vote
Okay.
campaign. And that's where we go out to festivals and events, and we partner with other organizations, and we have portable printers, and we have, you know, the iPads and laptops and Chromebooks and things like that. And people come up and we say, hey, we don't tell you who to vote for, but we print your ballot. If you want it print, want to screenshot it to, you know, your phone so that you know your ballot. You know who's on your particular ballot. And I was just on a call yesterday, and someone the one person I was talking to, I said, I think I know your council person, and I said, well, here's how you'll know. And I told her to go to the My Voter page.
Okay.
And she would be able to look at her ballot, but also look at your precinct or where you vote, and who's your elected officials in your district. And she was just really surprised, like, I did not know that I could look this up. And that's what we encourage people to do. We tell them to go to the My Voter page, and or IWillVote.org, and of course we have different links on our Facebook page under the One Person, One Vote, and you know, so that people will, you know, like our campaign says, know before you go vote. We arm you with all the information so that you will know where you need to vote, who's on your ballot, if you're registered to vote. And if you're not registered to vote, or if you need to update your information. A lot of people have old addresses on their ballot, you know. So it's like we arm you with all the information so that you will know before you go vote, because we don't want people to get to the poll and be confused or get turned away.
Sure. So speaking of being turned away, one thing I've wondered about that is what should somebody do if they go to the polls and they believe that they're able to vote, and then somebody tells them that they're not registered? How should they handle a situation like that?
They should ask for a provisional ballot. Is your right to ask for a provisional ballot. Do not leave. We tell people do not leave that precinct without voting, whether you vote like regular or whether you issue a provisional ballot. And that will give you time and the election office or election board time to figure out if you're in the wrong precinct, if you needed to update some information, or whatever the situation is that that gives you time. So I encourage everyone to not leave without issuing a provisional ballot. And then they have to let you in Georgia, if you're at the wrong precinct at 6:30 and the polls close at 7, they have to let you vote.
Okay.
Because in 30 minutes, there's no way for you to get to another precinct unless the precinct is next door. But there's not enough time to get to the next precinct. So if you're in line and you're there to vote and it's 6:30 and the polls close at 7, then they have to let you vote. So those
That's
are
good to know.
encourage people to pay attention to and to do.
Yes, that's good, empowering information.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you mentioned IWillVote.org and it was nobeforeyouvote.org. Those are the sites you were talking about? Did I get the websites right?
It's my voter page.
Okay.
Well, in the state of Georgia, you can go to My Voter page The whole website is mvp.sos.ga.gov. But most people can't remember all of that like myself. So I just encourage everybody to pull up Google or DuckDuckGo and type in my voter page and it will come up. But also, iwillvote.org will have all the information plus every state. You could so wherever you are, say you're in Ohio, you can go to iwillvote.org and then click on Ohio, and then it will bring up your Secretary of State website so that you can check, your voter registration.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. That sounds good information that people can get empowered by knowing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Triana, we thank you for sharing your interesting and empowering information today. I trust it will make people better voters and will motivate them to do more and get all the rights they are entitled to.
Yes, thank you so much, and thank you for having me and reaching out. And I love talking about, our right to vote and protecting our right to vote because it is our superpower.
Yes, good way to put it. Awesome. Triana, we wish you the best in your activism in One Person, One Vote, as well as your other activist organizations and also everything else you do in your personal and professional life.
Thank you so much.
All right, all the best and take care.
Okay.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.